These days we have so many notation programs that it's hard to believe that composers like Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart were able to write all their music just by hand. Handwritten music is a pain to write, hard to read, and easy to lose. However, in today's video, we're going to dive into my top 5 reasons why we should still be incorporating handwritten music in our composition process. If you're new here, my name is Saad Haddad and I'm a composer based in New York City. I have no bias against using any of these notation programs. In fact, I've been using Sibelius ever since I was 11 years old. There's something magical about being able to play back your scores with the click of a button or export all your parts without having to write out every single part by hand. But to me, writing on paper is still the most productive way to come up with ideas and to develop them into a full score. So let's get started with reason number 1, avoiding distractions. So we all need our computers these days, we all need our phones. And actually these devices, of course, are very productive things, especially to get things done fast. Now with composing is not a fast process to begin with. You got to generate ideas, you got to develop ideas, and you got to orchestrate all your ideas, of course. And I find the computer is not the best way to go about this. Number 1, you have to deal with distractions from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube. My channel is not a distraction, I would hope, but something useful, let's say, for you to be on. Now, the thing with me, at least, when I'm composing music is I need to find a different place in my room to compose. This way, I'm not tempted, for example, to turn on my computer and check out all these websites or actually do something else that's easier to do than composing, but still productive. I actually want to carve out time and carve out space for me to actually compose music. So what I do actually is I have a keyboard to the right of my desk that has no screen in front of it. And this is my place where my body knows, okay, you are about to compose music. You got to get into that zone for composing music, which leads us pretty nicely to our reason number 2, flow. Now, flow is this state of concentration where we feel like we can just keep on going with that activity without getting bored. We are actually at our happiest when we're in this state of flow. Now, when you're in this state of flow, time flies. You're not as hungry, and probably most important of all, your ego just gets shoved out the door. What I mean by this is that when you're writing something, when you're composing something, you don't have all these voices in your head telling you, oh, you shouldn't do this. Or on the flip side, voices in your head that's saying, oh, this is the greatest thing that God ever created on earth. No, you have something more of an objective sense of what is good and what is bad, and you're able to write all those things down in real time. There's actually a great book on this called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, which I have linked down below in the description. But if you don't have time to pick that book up, you can also check out this YouTube video that explains the book in summary. I also have that link down below in the description. And the best thing about flow, in my opinion, is that it makes you want to compose. It makes you want to compose, want to write longer, and in turn, you'll be more productive. So in my opinion, this only happens when you're actually composing directly on paper. So moving on to reason number 3, memory. I find that writing directly onto paper actually helps me retain what I was thinking when I was writing those pitches down. Oftentimes, if I'm writing something directly into the computer and I look back on it like a month or 2 months ahead, I wonder to myself, what was I thinking in that moment? And it's very hard for me to make changes. On the flip side, if I was actually writing these things down by hand, I find that there is something about that connection between what I was writing and what I was thinking that I'm able to recall later on, especially if I need to make edits. There is this really great article in the Huffington Post, which I have linked below, that actually details this in terms of how students take notes during class. They're able to recall more if they're actually physically writing on paper rather than typing their notes into a computer. So I suggest you check that out when you have time. Reason number 4 is health. Now we all know that too much screen time can strain our eyes in the short term and worsen our vision in the long term. However, I find that the actual color of the paper that you use helps a lot in terms of your vision in the short term and the long term. For example, if you're using white paper to write your music on, this actually strains your vision a little bit. Not as much, obviously, as when you're in front of a computer, but still, it strains a little bit when you're reading or writing on this kind of paper. What I like to use is this beige colored paper, which is a lot easier on the eyes, and you can read more about this kind of use of colored paper down in the description below. The last thing I would say about health is something that might not work for every single person, but it certainly works for me. Now, I mentioned earlier that you should position yourself away from the computer to avoid the distraction of the computer. But in addition, I find that it's really useful to position yourself in front of a window if at all possible. But I find it's very useful for me, at least, to be able to be connected with nature or to humanity in some kind of way when I'm composing music. The way I do it is that I have my computer up against the wall next to my window, and then I have this large plexiglass stand that I put on my keyboard and against the wall. This way I can put my manuscript paper directly on it, and I can also look through the window and through the plexiglass. So I find that extremely useful, at least for me. And finally, reason number 5, finding your voice. Probably the most overall cliche in all of music, or all of art for that matter, is finding your own voice. While handwriting your own music certainly won't get you to that point automatically, it certainly can help. There is just something on the subconscious level that happens when you and your hand are in total sync while you're writing music. A certain physicality begins to form where your hand naturally wants to write certain things. And I find that this is what your voice ultimately becomes. It's these things that you kind of do subconsciously without really knowing that happen from one piece to the other, to the other, to the other. I've actually had teachers that said that, I don't know how people know what my voice is. Like, how do they know what exactly I'm doing, or how do they know that this is a piece of mine? Well, in fact, there are certain things that they're doing in their music that they might not necessarily be aware of, but others can spot from one piece to the next. I find that this kind of relationship is very difficult to establish if you're working on the computer from the beginning all the way to the end of the composition process. If you like what you see in this video so far, why don't you gently tap that like button for the YouTube algorithm? Then we're going to go ahead and talk about my favorite manuscript paper of all time, the number 27 Carta manuscript paper from Hal Leonard, which I have linked down in the description below. This paper costs roughly between $10 and $11 on Amazon, and it comes in a booklet of 40 sheets that measure 18 inches long and 12 inches wide. Each sheet has 16 stabs printed in black, and I find this is more than enough for most types of ensembles that I'm working on. When you open up this booklet, you're going to notice a chart that shows the ranges and transpositions of most of the orchestral instruments. I find this extremely useful because it helps me avoid going to my phone or to the computer to look up these ranges and transpositions. So if I forget what the lowest note on the oboe is, or how the crotale is transposed, for example, I can just look it up in this chart. Now you might be asking myself, Sad, you're obsessed with this paper. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Well, yes, I do. I want to talk about the pencils that you use on this paper. Now, a lot of my composer friends swear by this black wing pencil that supposedly is a bit more suited for writing music and also for drawings and things of that nature. I find, however, that this is not the best use for your money. A set of 12 of these black wing pencils runs you about $40. I like personally the Ticonderoga No. 2 pencil. It comes in a set of 96 for only $9, and I have this linked below in the description as well. You can use really any other No. 2 pencil, but I just find it's better to save some money in this department rather than shell out all that money for a black wing pencil. It would really not be good if you lost one of those pencils either. So I would just stick to the No. 2 pencil. Paired with my No. 2 pencil, I really enjoy using a manual pencil sharpener rather than an electric one. I find the cuts that the manual sharpener make are just superior to the ones that electric one makes, for example. And I also just really like the sound that the manual pencil sharpener makes. The one that I use is from Life Color, and the model number is 0620. However, I couldn't find that same link that I used when I bought it off Amazon a couple years ago, so I found another one that you can check out down in the description below. But if you really want the Life Color one, I'm sure you can find it on eBay or some other website. And that's it for today's video. I hope that you found some of these reasons applicable to you and inspire you to create more directly onto paper. If you found value out of this video, consider subscribing to the channel and ding that bell for notifications. Until next time, keep writing, and more importantly, take care of yourself.